Welcome back. Now, earlier today, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana tabled the budget for the fiscal year. In the speech, he outlined a comprehensive tax policy plan aimed at broadening the tax base, enhancing tax compliance and streamlining administrative processes. Additionally, he revealed that investigations and prosecutions by the South African Reserve Services have yielded 4 billion rands in collections from major players in illicit gold and tobacco markets, bolstering confidence in revenue collection efforts. Sars Commissioner Edward Kieswetter joins me now to discuss these updates and more. Thank you so much for your time, Edward. Of course, the big thing that we were all looking at ahead of the budget were those tax revenues, in which we knew that there would be a shortfall of 56 billion rand. Talk to me about that underperformance.
Well, it's not quite right to call it an underperformance. It is a reflection of what's happening in the economy and how the estimate, because that's what it is, it's an estimate, it's not a target, that the minister set in February, how that translates from the assumptions into reality. And of course, in October, given what we then knew, the minister revised it down and made a further refinement in the last, today, in fact, for the last 5 weeks. I think what's important, Zanati, is that whenever the economy is struggling, it is so much harder to collect tax revenues because people, they live in fear, they live under financial constraints, so they hold on to their tax revenues. I can share with you, for example, that we have about 300 billion of debt owed by taxpayers to SARS that are not in dispute. Taxpayers just don't pay that. And that requires an enormous effort on the part of SARS to collect that. So just in this year, we have engaged with taxpayers and effectively we have resolved over 2 million cases. And a case may be for as little as a few hundred rand debt to millions of rands of debt. But through resolving those 2 million cases, we have collected just over 70 billion rand of additional revenue that would otherwise not have been collected. Now that would mean we would issue final judgments, we would issue civil judgments, we'll enter into settlement and compromise discussions, but collectively, that's 70 billion that we would not have had in the fiscus were it not for this effort. Another effort, for example, would be going out to find taxpayers who are not on the register. And in the last year, our register has grown by 4.5%. And just that work have added another 4.3 billion rand to the coffers. Then let me share one or two more examples with you. A big area of work that we engage in is fraud detection. Unfortunately, the refund system have come under significant attack by taxpayers, either by misrepresenting their income or expenses, or just absolute blatant fraud against the fiscus. So we processed this year, to give you an idea, about 13.5 million returns. Of that, our risk detection system, which is a function of data science and artificial intelligence, highlighted about 1.5 billion instances for us that we have to have another look at. And that piece of work ensured that we have not paid out 66 billion or 67 billion rand of revenue that would otherwise have flown out. So if you add all of these efforts that really are efficiency gains on the part of SARS together, then SARS's efforts have contributed 210 billion rand to the fiscus already year to date. And that's it's a 26% growth on our compliance revenue last year. So in a struggling economy, revenue from so-called voluntary compliance reduces, which means SARS has to really step up our efforts to respond to the minister's challenge. And that's what you see in the numbers.
There was a tax panel that I was moderating earlier on, Edward, and one of the tax experts said that a worry of his is the revenue that is stuck in the dispute process, and that that tends to go on for quite a while. What is SARS doing to navigate its way around that?
So it takes two to tango, right? So when a taxpayer enters into a process to dispute a debt, then the logical end game is we go to court.
Yeah.
And sometimes SARS wins, sometimes taxpayers win. The record is SARS have won more of these cases, either initially or on appeal. And then the taxpayer, that resolves the dispute. But the law also allows the commissioner to enter into settlement discussions with taxpayers. But let me say, I don't know who your panel was, but sometimes taxpayers play games and they wear us out. We have no incentive to not settle if there's a bona fide offer on the table. But if I owed you, Zanati, R1 million, and I came to you and I said, Zanati, you know what, instead of taking me to court, why don't I give you 50,000 Rand and we call it quits? You're not likely to settle with me on 50,000. If I come to 500,000 Rand, you're more likely to say, now we can talk.
Yeah.
Right? So I think taxpayers also are sometimes just mischievous and they give us just silly settlements because they think we are so desperate this time of the year for money. But I can tell you, we have to apply good governance, and we have a very, very rigid process by which every settlement offer by taxpayers are seriously considered. And if there's a basis, and we know that sometimes there are balance of probabilities, if there's a ground for settlement, SARS will always be willing to talk settlement.
All right. Well, we have run out of time, Edward. Thank you so much for your time and just giving us insights on the latest tax moves that we did see there on the budget. That was SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter.